a lot of the people on the left who are breaking their backs trying to get Joe Biden elected have all these excuses for why they think getting Joe Biden elected is the most important thing we could possibly be doing right now. And honestly, to me, the reasons that they keep coming up with sound like lazy, not well thought out rationalizations and mental gymnastics that they come up with when they're just working backwards from their conclusion, which is Joe Biden better than Trump, let's elect Joe Biden. And some of the reasons they give are like, oh, whatever you think of Joe Biden and how terrible he is on policy, things will improve under a Joe Biden administration compared to a Trump administration. I don't think that's true. And the reason for that, you don't have to look much further than the very last Democratic administration we had, which came in directly after George Bush, literally the worst administration in U.S. history. Did Obama come in and turn the country around and completely change the direction we were going in on so many important issues? No, he didn't. At best, on some isolated issues, he maintained the status quo and things didn't get dramatically worse. But in reality, in whole, when you look at his whole presidency and across all the different issues, we were worse off than when Obama came in. Mass surveillance. He expanded mass surveillance way beyond anything the Bush administration was able to get away with. The drone wars. Increased the drone strikes that were killing 90% civilians way more than Bush administration. Came in, we were at 2 wars. He left, we were involved in at least 8. Obama was president for 8 years in the height of a climate crisis emergency. And what did he do? Did he have any comprehensive plan to get us to green renewable energy? The exact opposite. He extracted more oil on U.S. soil than any other president in U.S. history. So very recent history shows us when we get a Democratic administration following a Republican administration, it's not a radical departure of policy. It's at best a continuation, but more accurately, an acceleration of whatever their policies were. Another silly point we hear from people on the left who are so invested in getting Joe Biden elected is, well, Joe Biden is so much further to the left on policy than Donald Trump that we have a better chance of influencing Joe Biden and talking him into doing left-wing progressive policies. Again, that's just not true when you apply just a minimal amount of skepticism and thought to that argument, because Joe Biden has a 50-year track record of fighting progressive policies, left-wing policies, tooth and nail on behalf of his political donors to make sure that they don't happen. And he also has a 50-year track record of supporting some of the most horrific, destructive right-wing policies that have been implemented in this country. And more than that, all of his advisors are just as bad. So take Trump out of the equation. Why do you think anybody like that would possibly be open to listening to left-wing policies and implementing them, whether it's through a compromise or whatever you think is going to happen in his administration? Joe Biden will be just as hostile as Trump when it comes to fighting against left-wing policies, if not more, because he has a record a mile long that proves that. So over the last couple of days, there's been new controversy in news media, especially left-wing media, where Joe Obama was doing a fundraising event with Joe Biden, and in the live stream, he's whitewashing how horrific and criminal the George Bush administration was, and making it seem like, it was just lovable, well-meaning, democracy-loving patriots that we just some people might have slightly disagreed with. So I want to use this as an opportunity to talk about some of the people who Joe Biden will almost definitely have in his administration, and dangerous his administration will be, not just to the left, but millions of people in this country and millions more across the world. Because there's a lot of talk about how Donald Trump is an existential threat. We need to do everything possible to remove him from the White House. We need to do everything we can to get Joe Biden elected. And that's the end of the story. But nobody really wants to have that conversation about how Joe Biden himself is an existential threat and how disastrous his policies that his administration will pursue are going to be to so many people in this country and around the world. All right, so let's start on economics and give you let me give you a look into in which economic policies they pursue. So as we've heard, I did a video about this already. He's picking Larry Summers to be his top one of his top economic advisors. I mean, what more is there to say? Larry Summers is a criminal. He's a crook. He's a fraudster. He's a grifter, scam artist who not only was instrumental in creating the conditions that inevitably led to the worst economic crisis of our lifetime, he was also hired by the Obama administration to clean up the mess that he made. And surprise, surprise, what did he do? He rewarded the frauds and the criminals, the Wall Street executives who created the crash, who started the crash, the economic crisis, the financial crisis, rewarded them, gave them trillions of dollars in taxpayer money for bailouts. Those very same executives who have caused millions of people to lose their jobs and their houses and all the horrific effects of the financial crisis and the economic crisis of 2008. He gave all of them bonuses worth individually millions of dollars, collectively billions of dollars in bonuses to Wall Street executives, and left the majority of the country decimated with no help from the federal government, no bailout for the regular people. That's what Larry Summers did, and that's his role in the very last economic crisis that we had in this country, worst in our lifetime. And what does Joe Biden do? To show everyone how much he does not give a fuck about the regular working class people in this country, about just the regular people in this country. Out of all the people he could have chose anyone in the goddamn world to be one of his top economic advisors. And he chose Larry Summers specifically because he knows what he's going to do. He'll come into the White House 2021 and he'll do the same thing he did when he came in during the Obama administration. Bail out the corporations at this historic time with record unemployment, at least 40 million people unemployed. That's real unemployment hovering between 25% and 30% right now in this country. Unheard of. And Joe Biden picks this fucking grifter to come in and advise him on economic policy. So Joe Biden knows exactly what he's getting with Larry Summers, and he did it anyway. He hired him anyway. I would say that's an existential threat to the 40 million people who are unemployed and the millions more who will continue to lose their jobs during the duration of the pandemic and the economic crisis. And like I said, that's a real existential threat to those people. On foreign policy, well, Joe Biden's record on foreign policy is enough to show you how much of an existential threat his administration will be to the millions of people abroad who are the victims of U.S. imperialism and have no real defense or recourse to protect themselves from it. Of course, we all know Joe Biden is instrumental in the Iraq War, helped in the Afghanistan War, all the other wars that were started during the Obama administration. Yeah, we know that. But also his advisors aren't going to push him in a different direction. They're going to be all on board with the neocon imperialism and U.S. empire. They'll be all on board with the lawless military interventions that Joe Biden and his donors, his defense contractor donors, have already cooked up. And look no further than one of his top VP candidates at this point, Susan Rice. Even if Joe Biden doesn't pick her to be VP, she'll definitely have a role in this administration. There's no doubt about it. And she was Obama's national security advisor. She advised him on every single issue related to national security and U.S. Interventions in the CIA, all of that. She was right there at giving Obama all the shitty, terrible advice that he listened to. Most notably, she was instrumental in the coup in Libya, which has brought unmeasurable chaos to the country. One of the most thriving, successful countries in Africa. The Obama administration went out of their way to overthrow the Gaddafi, who, like I said, was overseeing one of the most successful, prosperous countries in Africa, because he wasn't subservient enough to U.S. empire. So Susan Rice and Obama and the rest of the neocons in the administration, including Joe Biden, concocted a plan to overthrow Gaddafi, support jihadists that they were calling the rebels. And now Libya is a failed state, literally selling people as slaves in broad daylight in open markets across the country. And Joe Biden and Susan Rice worked hand in hand on that. They worked closely on the drone war, which, like I said, killing 90% civilians, massacring hundreds, really thousands of innocent civilians in the Middle East with these inaccurate drones that are working on faulty intelligence. We're massacring civilians, and did Susan Rice ever say, oh shit, maybe we should ease up and like actually completely eliminate this program? It's an entirely unconstitutional program. There's no due process. It's basically an assassination program. And on top of that, we're killing a bunch of innocent civilians accidentally all the time. So how about we stop? No, they were all on board with that. So these are some of the worst of the worst. And the resistance heroes, the Russiagate, some of the biggest propagators of Russiagate, John Brennan and James Clapper, they'll find their way. They'll worm their way into Biden administration. And they also have horrific records in this area of, quote, national security. John Brennan, former CIA director, like I said, oversaw torture programs, kidnapping and illegally torturing people. When the Senate was investigating said torture program, he illegally spied on U.S. senators in an attempt to threaten them or blackmail them into dropping the investigation. That's the kind of lawlessness you can expect in a Joe Biden administration. And also him and James Clapper lied through their teeth anytime they were testified in front of Congress, whether it was about the torture program or in James Clapper, when he was the head of when he was DNI, Director of National Intelligence, he was asked about the mass surveillance program. And like I said, Obama administration expanded the mass surveillance program into something that the Bush administration could have never even imagined. Literally spying on everyone in the country, collecting phone records, emails, text messages, internet history, all of that. And when asked about it, he just lied to his teeth through Congress, and that's a crime, it's a felony, it's perjury, and he got away with it scot-free. So they'll almost definitely worm their way back into the Joe Biden White House. And like I said, these people pose an existential threat to millions of people in this country, or millions of people around the world. So the argument that we really have to do everything possible to get Joe Biden elected because Donald Trump's an existential threat, it's not really holding up under any scrutiny, now is it? Let's talk about the climate crisis. Joe Biden, right now, as we speak, it's not up in the air. His top climate change advisor was a lobbyist for the fossil fuel industry. Right now, the co-chair for his campaign he sat on the board of a gas company in the fossil fuel industry. So all right, climate change an existential threat. Donald Trump is a buffoon who says climate change isn't real, and his actions are going to lead to the destruction and an inevitable climate crisis, climate apocalypse. So therefore, we need to do everything we can to elect Joe Biden to, I don't know, eliminate the existential threat of climate change. Is that what the argument is now? Because I can't keep up. But like I just said, Joe Biden is just as much in the pocket of the fossil fuel industry as Trump. They're literally running his campaign and running his climate policies. And like I said, he was vice president in an administration that presided over the largest oil production in U.S. history at the height of a climate crisis. So what do you think he's going to do if he walks into the White House January 2020? And what do you think he's going to do on the issue of climate? He's also going to be an existential threat. So the point of this video was to tell you, all of this talk about, oh, Joe Biden is so much more to the left of Trump on policy, so we have a better chance that he's going to just adopt progressive policies. That's horseshit. And also, we need to do everything we need in our power to elect Joe Biden because Trump's an existential threat. That falls flat on his face. That doesn't hold up to any scrutiny because Joe Biden himself is also an existential threat. And all the people who he's going to take advice from, they themselves are existential threats to people in this country and to people around the world. So I just wish that people would have an honest conversation about Joe Biden and what it actually means to elect Joe Biden. And stop with all the hyperbolic nonsense and the fear mongering and the whitewashing and the fantastical thinking that Joe Biden will be and in any way improve the situation, the crisis situation that we're in right now compared to Donald Trump. This isn't me saying just throw your hands up in the air and fuck it, everything's it's just there's no chance of improving anything and it's all going to shit. No, what I'm saying is learn from these protests, learn from this massive uprising that's happening right now. You can force the hand of politicians if there's enough people carrying out a sustained protest, massive protests and civil unrest across the country. They have no choice but to listen to us. And it doesn't matter who's in the White House is the point I'm trying to make. We're going to have to fight as hard to get Medicare for all, whether it's Trump in the White House or it's Joe Biden in the White House. We're going to fight as hard to get universal basic income and monthly payments to everybody in this country, whether it's Joe Biden in the White House or Donald Trump in the White House. We're going to have to fight just as hard to get action on the climate crisis, whether it's Joe Biden in the White House or Donald Trump in the White House. So I wish that people would stop all this back-breaking and intensive labor to get Joe Biden elected because they think that's the best way to get lefty policies, and instead focus their energy on what we see actually works, which is the protests that put immense pressure on elected politicians to actually meet our demands. That's what works. That's what we should be focusing on, not trying to get Joe Biden elected. If you choose to vote for Joe Biden over Trump, I can't tell you not to do that, but stop acting like that's the best use of everybody's time is to try to get this neoliberal corporatist elected, and stop pretending like that's the best way to get lefty policies because it's not.